Okay, we are back. And there's one key thing that you need to know about your brain, and that is that your brain isn't actually designed to make you happy. Your brain is designed to keep you safe. So the brain's number one goal is to keep you alive, to survive, right? And so when we depend upon our brain to make us happy, we are depending on something that is actually incapable of making us happy. And this isn't bad news. This is actually great news. And I'll explain to you why. So, the mind is an essential force in our lives with one primal objective, and that is survival. Our brain is wired in such a way to, we're constantly picking up threats, right? Any signals of danger. And we're designed on a fight or flight basis to keep us alive. Now, our brain is constantly alert and sensitive towards anything that can endanger our lives so that it can act automatically and protect us when necessary. So this is, for example, our ancestors, right? We have been biologically programmed to keep us alive. And this is how, actually, the good news is trauma that gets passed on from one generation to the next also passes on, right? Our ancestors that said, don't eat that berry kills you, right? That is this intuition. And it's our fear that allows us to not eat that berry and die, for example. I see this with my cats all the time. My cat, she knows biologically, it's fascinating. She will run up to a gecko and just devour it. Poor geckos. And yet she'll like go to run towards this big, massive wasp-like thing here flying in the window. She hears the sound. She goes running up to it, and she will, within 1 foot, she will go to eat it, and she will have a visceral reaction in her body where her pupils will change, and she'll get this like scared look on her face and immediately back up. So this is, again, the body's survival technique, and it's passed down from generation to generation. This is the good news. If we hear something rustling in the woods, it is our nature, our biological nature, to assume the worst, because assuming the worst has kept us alive for thousands and thousands of years as a species, right? So the mind's survival circuitry is important. It keeps us safe from potential dangers or threats, and we want that. We're not trying to get rid of this. But the mind isn't just about keeping your physical existence alive. It also strives to keep our perceptions of the past, for example, alive, our difficult memories, our sense of identity, our limiting beliefs, our ego alive. Not because these things are in support of our happiness, but because they are familiar. And again, according to the mind, familiar equals safe. So the mind is so much more likely to stick with what is familiar, even if it doesn't serve our happiness and our well-being, than to explore something that has the possibility of enhancing our happiness, but is unknown. So modern psychology and ancient wisdom both agree that the mind has a natural, what we call negativity bias. And this is essentially the brain's tendency to focus more on the negative than the positive. We actually have a greater tendency to notice what's wrong in a situation over what's right. We are programmed to be able to see what we don't like in a situation over what we do. And this doesn't make us negative. This makes us human. So we're programmed in this way. This bias towards the negative leads us to pay more attention to bad things that happen, making them seem so much more important in our lives, maybe than they really are. It's not to say that bad things that happen aren't bad, but what I'm saying is that sometimes our mind will blow up. It's programmed to blow up difficult situations and to minimize the positive ones because that keeps us focused on survival. So our brain's survival circuitry is designed to keep us safe. It's programmed to scan the environment for threats, so it's natural that we pay more attention to the negative. So some people will say, like, why am I so negative all the time? What's wrong with me? I can't seem to feel anything but worried or anxious. Why can't I just be happy? Everyone else looks so happy around me. On social media, everybody just looks happy all the time. What's wrong with me? We catastrophize our experience, no? And this is the reason why you're not happy and positive all the time, because you're not supposed to be. This is what we call our negativity bias. And this is the brain's innate tendency to focus on the negative over the positive. So this means that we are actually 9 times more likely to recognize what's wrong in a situation over what's right, to see what we don't like about something over what we do. We're so much more likely, and you know this to be true, you are so much more likely to remember that criticism, that hurtful thing that someone said, over the millions of compliments that you receive on a daily basis. You could get 30 compliments one day, and it is the one criticism or the perception of a criticism or something like, what did they mean by that? That's what you'll go to sleep with at night, not the 30 compliments, but the one possible criticism. And that's because you're 9 times more likely to remember that event. This is how media works. We're 9 times more likely. Psychologists know this. News people like the news and newspapers and stuff, they know that we're 9 times more likely to read a negative news line over positive ones. So this is why you never see a news headline that says 10 million people swam in the ocean today and didn't get eaten by a shark. Right? But definitely you're going to notice the news headline that says somebody got eaten by a shark today. One person out of the 10 million that swam in the ocean, one person got eaten by a shark. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But we are definitely more like, this is clickbait, right? When there's a big dramatic news headline, our mind is constantly looking, what do I need to be alert for in order to keep me safe, keep me alive, keep me prepared to take action, keep us in that fight or flight. And of course, the news know this. This is why we need to have tech boundaries in place, because our mind is hypervigilant. And when we're exposed to that, definitely our mind is 9 times more likely to click on that article over like the beautiful, inspirational, positive story, right? 9 times more likely to recall insults better than we can praise. And that's why that's so painful when we experience insults, because it impacts us so deeply. We're 9 times more likely to react emotionally to a negative event than a positive one, to remember traumatic memories over the joyous ones. If you think back to your childhood, definitely you have positive memories. Even for myself, there's very like long traumatic periods, chapters in my life, and my mind I've had to do so much inner work, so much therapy, so much of my own inner processing, inner healing to be able to see, oh, wow, inside of that chapter, there actually was a lot of joy. But my mind wouldn't allow me to see that. It could only zoom in on the trauma, the pain, the difficult memories. Now, through doing all this work that you're also embarking on with me here, now I can access, oh my gosh, yeah, there was a lot of difficulty. That's honest and real. That was very painful. And look, oh, I remember that Christmas now. Oh, I remember, doing that thing and it was all nice, right? 9 times more likely to reflect on what worries us more than what brings us happiness. So have you ever noticed that? You'll be so worried about like why we're not happy, right? Our brain will go to all the reasons and excuses as to why we can't be happy versus knowing what actually brings us joy. And so how do we manage that? The goal is to develop the centers of the brain that are wired for happiness. We actually get to start to change our brains and start to know that our primal centers of our brain is that it takes intention, it takes will, and it takes conscious effort to rewire our minds for calm, happiness, and fulfillment. Our primal brains, not really designed to be happy. Our primal brain only cares keep us alive, keep us in survival, right? That's what it needs. And that's what's kept us alive all these years. It wasn't the pursuit of happiness that kept us alive as a species. It was our hypervigilance. It was our looking for threats. It was being hyper aware of what's rustling in the bush over there. Is that a snake, right? I think I told you the story of coming out of my bedroom and thinking I saw a snake. It was only a leaf, but it was my negativity bias that made me interpret that as a snake. So we need our negativity bias to survive, but we need to go beyond it in order to truly thrive. And so how we do that, how we go beyond our natural negativity bias, is that we activate the centers of our brain that are associated with happiness, with contentment, with peace, with joy, with calm, with balance. And this actually requires intention. It requires will. This isn't our brain's natural state. The nature of your soul, that's a different story. Sometimes we hear these spiritual teachings, your nature is happiness. The truth of who you are is eternally peaceful, right? So many different spiritual traditions say that yourself, your true self, your awareness, your consciousness, your spirit, your soul is innately peaceful. It's innately happy. Happiness beyond an emotion. It's just who you are as a being. It's the mind that creates all the drama. So going beyond our natural negativity bias, knowing that our brain is hardwired for survival. Here's 4 strategies for overriding this negativity bias. So number 1 is we just first have to recognize, right? So when you're in that downward spiral of noticing everything that's wrong, say, oh, hey there, negativity bias. Thanks for popping in. Thanks for trying to keep me safe. And I will choose as my higher self, as my empowered conscious self, I will choose to see what I'd like to see here. Simply being aware of our negativity bias empowers us to understand our minds more deeply, to recognize that it's so natural for us to focus on the negative and not to take everything too seriously so that you can consciously elevate your happiness. So, for example, let's say that you had a great day at work, okay? And let's say that overall your day was great. And yeah, at the end of the day, you go home and your partner, your spouse says, "How was your day?" And you say, "Oh, it was terrible." And here's what happened. Your day was overall great. In the morning, you got a new client, you finished some paperwork that's been on your mind for a while. Someone brought in healthy, vegan, gluten-free donuts. This one coworker, you had a great heart-to-heart with them. You're feeling good. You're feeling fulfilled. And yet, towards the end of the day, a coworker made a comment that you found irritating. And you find yourself replaying that moment in your mind for the rest of the day. You get home from work and someone asks how your day was. And naturally, you say, "Oh, it was terrible." Not because the whole day was terrible, but because you are 9 times more likely to put emphasis on that one irritating comment than the vegan donuts, than signing the new client, the beautiful heart to heart with another coworker, finishing up these things that you wanted to accomplish. And this is human nature. So these unhappy moments naturally stick more deeply with us. So what we need to do is we need to actually refocus our mind. We need to recognize and refocus our mind to give a fair and equal weight to genuinely happy moments in our day, to give us a greater perspective on our day and therefore our life. So the second strategy is gratitude. So knowing that we're 9 times more likely to notice what we're not grateful for, what we don't like in our lives versus what we do, we want to start to work with a ratio of 3 to 1, happy thoughts to negative thoughts, okay? And so what we can do, and this has nothing to do, by the way, with lying to ourselves or cheating reality. It's not about, oh, just be grateful for something that's awful, right? Or choosing to see something good, in what's not good. This is simply about the ability to see the little glimmers of goodness, genuine goodness in your days, in your mind, in your life, however small, despite what is genuinely awful in your life. Because we're all human, and definitely you're going to have moments that are amazing. You're going to have amazing moments in your life, and you're going to have moments that just suck, and painful moments and heartache. And that will happen because you're human and you have a beating heart and you have a nervous system. And if you're operating functionally as a human, definitely you're going to experience heartache and disappointment and fear and all the things. And the goal is never to not feel those things. It's about being okay with those things, building our tolerance, that window of tolerance to be okay despite those experiences, and being able to seek out little bits of gratitude, knowing that your mind is going to zoom in on that one irritating comment from the coworker, and being able to see at the end of the day something more balanced. Like, yeah, I had this one difficult moment. It really challenged me. I didn't love it. It was really hard. And this coworker brought in donuts, and that was really nice. And I had a really special chat with a coworker. And it just gives us more balanced perspective. So I'm going to share a special gratitude practice you can do in a sec. But the third strategy to overcoming that negativity bias is to amplify. So knowing that it simply takes more of us to remember positive experiences, we want to start to pay extra attention to the good things that happen to us. So our negative life experiences, they're quickly transferred and stored in the subconscious mind, in that long-term memory. And positive experiences require more active effort to actually remember clearly. So how we do that is that we amplify the natural moments of joy, of peace, of contentment in our everyday life. So what does it mean to amplify? It means when you're in that embrace with your partner, your child, your whatever it is, that you really savor it. And on purpose, knowing that this moment is not something that will stick with you. A simple hug, it's going to come, it's going to go. Not a negative one. A negative hug, a hug that you don't really love, that will stick with you the rest of your life. But a loving, cozy, nice hug, it won't naturally stay. So we need to amplify it. We need to savor that hug and drink up every moment. And when you're driving home from work and you see the sunset, to pull over and magnetize that experience in your heart, right? When someone says that compliment to you, don't just brush it off like, oh, it's nothing, or, oh, this old thing, it's not that nice or whatever. Don't just brush it off. Like, really savor it and say, oh, thank you so much for those beautiful words. That means the world to me. Thank you so much for noticing. Thanks for saying that. That's so kind of you, you know? And we want to do that 9 times. Knowing that negative experience has 9 times more weight, we have to amplify 9 times positive experiences to give us a more balanced perspective on life. And it's not about how long we hold on to those moments for. It's not about clinging to positive experiences. We let them come. It's how deeply we experience that moment, and then we let it go. So we're not chasing pleasure. We're not chasing happiness. We're not clinging to happy moments, because that also puts us in the valley of suffering, knowing that that moment needs to pass. And yet it's while we're in it, while that is the truth of this moment here and now, can you savor it? Can you amplify that experience in your heart 9 times to give it that balance that we want to see? And then finally is intentions. This is the 4th strategy, and this is about intentional affirmation. This is a subconscious strategy to help reprogram our subconscious mind with more positive, more affirmative, and intentional statements, so that these types of thoughts, the positive thoughts, let's call them. Again, I don't love the positive negative because it makes us think something that's right or wrong. But let's say like the ones that are in support of your happiness, can become our new normal. And I'm going to share a specific practice that you can do for both gratitude and intention in a sec. So let's pop into an evening gratitude practice that you can start to do to help override that negativity bias, to transform our subconscious memory. And this is just a short, sweet 30-second practice that's going to help you to feel, experience, and embody that gratitude. So the goal is to develop the happiness and safety centers of the brain through gratitude. So this has been scientifically proven. Yogis, meditators, Buddhists, Hindus, everybody's known this. Christians, everybody's known since the beginning of time that gratitude is really, really healthy for us, that it's very healthy for our brains. And now science can map out that it's actually increasing activity in the centers of the brain that are associated with higher levels of fulfillment, more joy, the safety centers in our brain. We can't be both genuinely grateful in our hearts and deeply afraid at the same time. They can coexist, but the gratitude, if it's true and genuine, will always override the fear. So here's the practice. Each night before you go to bed, make the last thoughts of your day grateful ones. So the first thought of the day, the last thought of the day, these are the most impactful, because as we're waking up in the morning and falling asleep at night, we're entering into our subconscious realms of our mind. This is where dreams are. Okay, so that subconscious realm, we go from the if you've ever seen the brain waves, there's the beta brain waves, which is the daytime active conscious thinking brain waves. Then as they start to slow down, as we go into relaxation, such as when we wake up and fall asleep at night, we go into alpha waves, which is more associated with relaxation. And then we get into the subconscious realm called the theta brain waves, as the brain waves start to slow down. And that is a portal, an entrance into our subconscious mind. If you've ever done yoga nidra or hypnotherapy, or many different therapies will work with that deeply relaxed, almost dreamlike state to transform the programming of our mind. And this is why we like first thought of the day, last thought of the day, grateful ones. And these are daily practices, so you don't need to go to a practitioner. I always share in this Thrive program, what can we do? What is the most practical, the most effective practice that we can do? Because you can have knowledge about the best practices in the world, but you're only going to gain benefit from what you actually do. People say, what's the best practice for my anxiety? The one that you're actually going to do, which is probably realistically a practice that can be done in 5 minutes or less, but can be done consistently daily. All of these practices that I share with you, I don't want them to be big 1 hour, meditations or, 2 hour long events. I want them short and sweet for you so that it feels accessible. It feels practical. It feels like, yes, I can definitely do this, because it's what you actually do that's going to transform your mind, and it's transforming your mind that's going to transform your life. So before sleep, I want you to reflect upon 3 things that you feel genuinely grateful for. And you can practice this in one of 3 ways. This can be written. So maybe you bought a new journal for this Thrive program, or if you have a gratitude journal, this is such a beautiful practice that we can start to do. One, because it awakens those centers of the brain, the happiness centers. Two, because it helps us to reprogram our subconscious mind before bed. And three, when you know that tonight you're going to write down 3 things that you're grateful for, you're going to be actively looking throughout your day what's going to go into your gratitude journal that night. It's amazing. People say this all the time. Since I started that, now I'm actively looking for grateful moments, things to be grateful for, because that's on our radar. This can also be verbally. So this is something that my partner and I like to do before we go to bed. We always ask each other, what's 3 things you're grateful for? Or what was the best moment of your day? Something like this. And that's just a nice way to fall asleep with that kind of energy. Or this can be mentally, because again, I want you to actually do this. And if the journal thing is too much, if you don't have someone with you to say it out loud, then I just want you to think as you're slowly drifting off with the last thoughts of your day. You know, you're not thinking about tomorrow, you're not thinking of plans, when you're going to wake up. You've dealt with all that, ideally, before you get into bed. And now you're just going to think, what am I grateful for today? Little tip, put a sticky note on your nightside table as a reminder, or a reminder on your phone before bed. Because again, you gotta actually do it in order to get the benefits of it. And the idea here is to start to attune our body, our mind to the very vibration of gratitude, to activate those centers of the brain. This is what's going to create that big transformation for you. So that is all for this lesson. I will see you back in a sec, and we are going to go over the AWARE method. We're going to tie it all together for you and share the last 2 steps. So I will see you there.